Welcome back to The Athlete's Voices. Today I have a guest, Bridget Brennan. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about what you do exactly.
Okay, so I'm a track and field athlete. I compete in the 400 hurdles. So I've been doing that for about 5 years, and then before that I did heptathlon and decathlon, pentathlon I mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am a teacher, so I teach part-time right now. I have a gluten-free baking business.
Okay.
And I do online tutoring, so that's pretty much all of the stuff I do right now. And my main focus is track at the moment, so yeah.
Yeah. So, we talked a bit earlier, and you explained to me that you were a collegiate athlete. Right now, you're not anymore.
Yeah.
How has your experience of sport actually changed because of that?
Great question. So, as a collegiate athlete, the pressure was different. So, you kind of had the school expectations of you, your coach and your teammates' expectations. So you were competing for yourself, but also for the team. And then with post-collegiate, it's more like you do it because you want to. You have your own goals, and it's really just self-driven, which I really like. And then with post-collegiate, there's also... with just plain collegiate, there was also kind of a controlled environment.
Yeah.
So there was less variables, when you have class, when your practices are. It's set up really well to compete that way. And then when you get into post-collegiate, there's a lot of variables. You've got your career.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure for your career to be your main priority. And so a lot of times you have to sacrifice different things, or you're finished your day of work and you're just exhausted. Getting to practice, you're like, how can I even do this? I'm so tired from my job.
Yeah.
So, and then another big difference I've noticed is when I was in university, you had your whole team with you. Everybody's like-minded. They're all competing for the same goal. When you're post-collegiate, it's hard to find people to train with sometimes, and there's a lot less people. So for me, I typically still train with college and university athletes in the university training clubs or the teams. And then there's a few post-collegiate athletes here and there, and it's lucky if you can find a group of a solid group of them that you can train with. So those are kind of the main differences that I've noticed so far.
Do you miss that dynamic of having kind of even though you guys are at the end of the day competing against each other a little bit, there's still a team dynamic? Do you miss that a lot?
I do, yeah. I really miss it with relays. I think about this all the time because when I see the university athletes that I train with, they get to do relay practices and compete at their conference championships, and I really miss that team aspect and supporting each other and working together. So that's definitely something that I miss, and hope to. Right now I'm actually competing on one of the Canadian teams in the Canadian Track and Field League called the Huskies. So that started a couple years ago. This will be the third season that they've had. And that's been really cool because there are a lot of post-collegiate athletes in this league. And so at the championships, you do get a chance to be on relays with your team and score points for your team. So that's been super cool, that development in the track world.
And I want to backtrack a little bit and tell me how you started actually working out, doing different sports.
Oh, great question. Since I was a kid?
Yeah.
Growing up, I loved sports. I was really drawn to them. My parents really loved sports, so they kind of supported us. And there's 5 kids in my family, so I'm the oldest. And all of us actually went on to compete at university in track and field at the same university, actually, at St. FX, which is cool. So, growing up, did all kinds of sports. I lived in the country. I grew up on a potato farm, so really, besides working on the farm, sports is the only other thing that you can do. So, we did lots of soccer, hockey, running, just kind of running all over the yard and running everywhere. Swimming, snowboarding, skiing, everything. And then as I got to high school, I started narrowing in my focus on hockey and soccer and track. And then soccer was actually my favorite sport.
Okay.
And then when I went to university, I actually tried out for the soccer team, and then that didn't work out for me. But after training camp, the girls were like, you should go try out for the track team. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know there was a track team here. And so I figured out where to go, went and tried out, ended up making the team, and then that was the start of my track journey. So I think because I started competitive track so late, like when I was about 18, most people, a lot of the athletes I knew in university had started in middle school, kind of getting more into it. But because I had started kind of later, I feel like that's helped with my longevity in the sport and not feeling burnt out, and still kind of excited about getting personal bests and learning new events. So
okay, but have you ever felt like you were maybe not good enough or stuff like that because you didn't have that past?
Yeah, definitely. So great question. When I first started at university, I obviously you have like the big fish, small pond situation in high school. And so you go to university, and my mom, every new transition, she'd say, okay, well, maybe you're one of the strongest players on this team, but when you go to high school, there's going to be a lot better players, so you can learn from them. And then I'd kind of like work my way up through that. And so same expectation when I got to university. I thought, you know what, there's going to be a lot of athletes who are better than me. I'm really excited to learn from them and be on their team and just like work my butt off and work my way up and see how good I can get on this team. So definitely, like, you naturally compare yourself to the other first year girls or the other girls on the team. You're like, wow, how are they? I'm doing all the same training as them. I'm doing all the same things as them. I live with them. Like, how are they still faster?
Yeah.
And so then you're always like trying to figure it out and like figure out, get that edge. And anyway, so there's definitely that. And it, for me, worrying that I wasn't good enough or that I wasn't going to make the team or wasn't going to make the relay team, I didn't think of that as so much as negative. It was more like motivation for me to just push harder every practice and like learn more and do better. So
yeah, I think that's kind of the key when you're talking about that, is like doing that mental shift of like not comparing yourself in a way that is gonna hurt you, but rather in a way that it's gonna motivate you, and you're gonna be like, okay, I'm trying to do this.
For sure.
And being curious, as you said, like learning with the others, right?
Yeah, and I did learn a lot from those athletes that I trained with and competed with. And of course, like I wanted the best for them as well. Like I wanted to see them succeed, and I wanted to see myself succeed. So at the end of the day, there's like the competitive aspect of trying to get that spot on the team or get that medal or make the national like championships. But there's also the aspect of getting your own personal bests, which is really fun because that's a way that like maybe you didn't win the race, but you still got a personal best, then you can still celebrate and be excited about that, because at the end of the day, like, you're really just competing against yourself and trying to be better than you were the day before. And then I just think that the people I compete against are helping me to be better for myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. And you also told me about the fact that you had various concussions.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me a little bit, like, what happened?
So after university, I moved, so that was in Nova Scotia. I moved to Calgary to be a teacher and to compete. I chose Calgary because they seemed like they had a good track hub. They had like a bobsledding hub, and I had actually been recruited to the Canadian bobsled development program when I was in university through RBC Training Ground. So I was like, you know what, this might be a good chance for me to actually go try it out, and I'll be out there anyway, so I'll give it a go. So I went out there, I was teaching, and then unfortunately near the end of my first year, I got in a car accident. And so I sustained like a pretty severe concussion from that. and then a couple other injuries. And then after I felt like I was near full recovery or nearing, I felt like, about 8 months later, I thought I was good to go. And so I ended up going out for bobsledding and then did a couple runs there. And it was really fun until I actually was like going down the trail. And then it was like terrifying. It was very scary, and I knew it wasn't for me. And I ended up like I got a pretty bad concussion from one of my runs as well. So that was kind of a setback. And then about a month later, while I was still recovering, I actually got in another car accident. So
oh my God.
It was like, and then I also sustained compounded concussion from that. So that was in 2019, and that was a pretty big setback for me. So all of that year, I was like trying to like heal. I was trying to go back to teaching, like see if I could teach. I was still trying to train, and so I had to take a lot of time off and then kind of go back and forth because I did have a lot of like concussion symptoms that I was dealing with, so that was super tough. And then that actually kind of prolonged for the entire next year as well, so all through 2020. And anyway, it was quite a long time, so I did end up having to take 6 months off teaching, which was super tough because with concussion, I guess there's a big mental health component, and it's cool that it's mental health awareness time of the year right now. But with concussions, like sometimes you can't really see the struggles that other people are going through. So when I was I'd seen my teammates be concussed before in hockey in high school and in track, and so, but then experiencing that was a whole different thing. And so I think the biggest thing for me is that people think you're fine because you don't look hurt. You can kind of tell if you look in people's eyes, though. It's kind of like gray, cloudy, and they're like in so much pain. So my mom would always know, like I'd send her, she'd always be like, send me pictures every day, like just tell me how you're doing or FaceTime me, and then she'd just look at me and be like, you're not doing well.
Not good.
Yeah, exactly. So and then with concussions too, like you have bad days, you have good days, and so the tricky part is like, yes, I'm off work, I'm trying to get better, and then maybe I'm having a really good day that day, so I'm excited, I get up, I like go for a walk, and then I see somebody from work who's like, oh, it looks like you're better, or like you must be faking it, and so that was kind of a struggle, and then just kind of getting back into sport throughout the whole process. I was lucky to have a really supportive coach, a really supportive team, to kind of get me through, and just you have to figure out where your limits are. And I remember for about a month I wasn't able to do any exercise. I would walk, and then I would be really excited to try running, so I'd start running, get like a migraine, get really nauseous. I'm like, I can feel my brain jiggling around, I better stop. So every couple days on my walks I would try doing a little jog. And then every time, like after a couple seconds, I would just get those symptoms and be like, okay, not today, but it'll happen. And then about a month later, I started running, and I ran for a whole minute, and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop, but that was really good. And then a few days later, I did like 5 minutes, and then that's when I knew I was starting to make my comeback. And then I got to the point where I could run for 30 minutes without feeling those like gross symptoms. And then that's when I knew I could probably go back and try training again for track.
So in terms of time, how long was like since like the first concoction all the way to like really being able to go back and run for longer? How long did it take you?
Probably about 2 years. So,
and I was gonna ask, like, amidst all of that, how did you feel? Because that's 2 years, there's like the pandemic in between too. How did it go?
So funny enough, by March 2020, I had actually met with a doctor can I give him a shout out?
Yeah, sure.
His name is Dr. Nathan Kaiser. And he is a chiropractic neurologist. He was amazing. So I worked with him, did like a super intensive treatments. It was like all natural, kind of like structural treatments. So to kind of rewire the pathways in my brain and to help with those symptoms. And he did a lot of like exercise involved with it. So my dad actually came and was there with me because it was like 6 hour a day process for a week. God, yeah. And that, like, I had tried so many things, nothing was working. This finally worked, and I was so grateful. So after about 3 weeks after seeing him, I had exercises to do. But after 3 weeks, I was like, wow, I feel better. I can actually do stuff. I can make plans because I'm not worried about having migraines all the time and like not being able to do anything and being dizzy and whatever. And so that's actually when the pandemic started. And so I had already gone through like my dark, like depressive days where I was alone all the time and like the world was spinning on without me while I was like in a dark room or just like crying by myself. I'm like, I can't do anything. I don't know if I'll ever get better. Is this what my life's going to look like forever now? Yeah. And I had kind of like worked my way through that for 6 months and spent a lot of time just like doing my own thing and trying to be okay with like not being in a routine, not working, like not hanging out with friends very much. And then by the time I was healing, I was so excited. I'm like, I can read a book now. I can go outside. I can drive. I can run. Like all these things that I can do. And then everything's shutting down. So everyone was kind of going into like kind of a collective lockdown. And then I felt like my life was just like ramping up. So even though the lockdown started, I still felt amazing and excited because I could, like, now my brain was working, and so that was kind of, so I kind of was, like, living on a high for a few months for the first little bit, and then after that, I guess it helped me because I was able to really zone in on other people's mental health and knowing the signs and seeing other people going through some struggles that I went through and trying to figure out how to help them through that.
Yeah. I think like as an athlete it's very interesting because the mental side, although like we focus so much on the physical, but the mental side is so huge because when you think about like people that break world records, they have to like push their limits all the time, so it's like talking in your brain kind
exactly
of, right?
Yeah.
And when you're supposed to like rest, it's something that your brain is not so used to. So how did it go for you
with just like
resting and like having to recover from like all those
it was super challenging. Just trying to I'm not the type of person that likes rest. I don't even like sleeping. I know I have to sleep, but even as a baby and a kid, like I didn't sleep very much. Probably drove my parents crazy. I was very hyperactive. I still am very hyperactive. Resting, that was a huge struggle for me. You really have to make a shift in your mindset and just think. So every day I would make goals. So I would say, today, these are my non-negotiable things I'm getting done. I'm going outside in nature. I'm going to walk or like do some type of exercise. And I'm going to see somebody. I'm going to talk to somebody in my day. 3D. On the phone, yes, but like just being in person with somebody. Yeah. Those are kind of my 3 things. And of course, like get up, get dressed and shower and everything. So those are my goals every day, just starting little. And then after a while I would be like, okay, I did my 4 things. Maybe I'll focus on what I'm going to eat today, or just kind of go really back to basics. And then give myself focuses so that I can distract myself from the desire to be working out, to be going 100 miles an hour in every direction. And, so that was definitely a challenge, but it taught me some really good skills and how to be patient and focus on something else. And
patience is a good lesson for everybody. Anyways,
for sure. And then I used that time too to focus on aspects of my track of my athletic areas that I needed work on. So sleeping, like how to have a good sleep routine, nutrition, proper nutrition, when to eat, make sure that I eat enough, and focus on healthier stuff. And then that's actually when I started my baking business. So I started doing like a gluten-free baking business, and I do healthy, like sugar-free things. My sister is celiac actually, so that's kind of why I started that, and I'm gluten-free. So that allowed me, baking was something I could do that didn't trigger a lot of my symptoms when I wasn't able to work. And then I was like, you know what? I do need to make money somehow, and I don't know when I'll be able to go back to teaching, so maybe I should just start baking and like see how it goes. And then it ended up going really well. So
that's great.
Kind of a silver lining,
Yeah, it is. And it's good to have like something that is completely different, I guess, from like all the training and all the...
For sure.
It kind of like takes your mind away from that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good reset, get refreshed.
So you've been like doing a lot of sports for a while. We've done like a lot of events, especially at high levels. What was like, do you recall an event or a moment where you felt a lot of pressure, and how did you manage that pressure?
Yes, I do. So in my last year of university, it was our conference championships. This is probably the most pressure like I put on myself basically, but also, it was my 5th year. So you get 5 years of eligibility in Canada in university sport. So it was my 5th year, last chance, last conference championship. A lot of my family was there watching, which is awesome. And then I really wanted to do well and just go out with a bang for my last year competing. And I really wanted to qualify for nationals. So to qualify, it's called U Sports now. At the time, it was called CIS. So to qualify, you either win your conference championship in your event. For us, because we're the Atlantic Conference, we get 1 spot. So the winner of every event can qualify to go, as long as you're within like the top around 16 in your event, or if you're top 12 in Canada, whether you win or not, you can still go. So I had just started doing the pentathlon that year, so 5 events, and I was kind of on the cusp for each of my events. So I had like the 300, I had 60-meter hurdles, long jump, and the pent, and then I would always do the 4x4 relay as well. So I was kind of like in the range of top 12, but like I could have maybe made it for all of them, or maybe not made it for any of them. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like give it my all. I have to do my best. So in 2 days, I ended up doing all of those events and like all the finals. So it ended up being 12 events. So I remember I just went into zombie mode. Like I was like, I have to do this. Like I'm not even going to take energy to be nervous. Like I just show up, I do one thing, I don't even think about how it went, I do the next thing. And it ended up like working out really well for me. And I ended up qualifying in all of the events except for hurdles, because hurdles was like 5 minutes after my 300 final. So in my head, I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to win this. And like I was pep talking myself. My legs are all jiggly. Like I walk over to the start line and I was like, all right, I got this. Like, and I had hyped myself up so much that by the time I got to the start line, I thought I was going to win, like 100%. I was like, I'm actually winning this. Like, I'm going to get a personal best. I'm ready, whatever. So anyway, I was expecting that. So the gun went off. I got over the first hurdle. Didn't even make it to the second hurdle. My legs just gave out.
Oh, really?
And so I was like, well, my body had a different plan. So that was funny. That was kind of like, oh, well. I was just kind of in shock that everything else had been working out so well. So I was like, something has to give. This is it. But yeah, put a lot of pressure on myself. I ended up squeezing in to be 12th in the pent. And then when I went to nationals, that was like probably another situation where I put a lot of pressure on myself. But I ended up getting like a 6-second PB in one of my events, and then ended up like bumping up to 6th place finish. So
that's really good.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Thanks. So for me, I think when I put a lot of pressure on myself, it usually results really well.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I like to do that. If I need to put that final push on, I will. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think as someone who also like does so many different things, you're the kind of like person that loves to have like a little bit of pressure, and like as you said, you're hyperactive. You don't want to like stay still for too long.
Yeah, for sure. And I find like if I have the pressure, then I can be like I can maximize my productivity, because I'm like, I have to do this. I don't have time to second guess myself. I think that's why track has been so good for me as a sport, because I noticed as a student, I would always leave stuff till the last minute. And and then I realized I'm like, I should stop procrastinating. And so I started doing stuff early. And then I would just sit there and be like, well, this might be a good idea. Well, maybe I should do that idea. And like, I'm just not getting anything done. I'm just thinking way too much. I'm overthinking everything. I'm reviewing and revising my stuff like for hours. And I'm like, if I just started this an hour before it was due, I'd have this whole thing done in an hour. And I'd be like, I don't have time to second guess myself. I don't even have time to proofread this. Like, click, done, submit, move on. Like, and so that's kind of how I was as a student. I'm sure my grades would sometimes reflect that. But that's just kind of how I am. So I think that's why track has been a really good fit for me.
Yeah. I would like to end the podcast with like what kind of advice you would give like to your younger self, and ultimately to younger girls that maybe are interested in like starting track or starting any sport.
Okay, I would say advice I would give, definitely be patient with yourself, and yes, when you're working super hard, you're expecting that outcome, you're expecting that personal best. It might not come when you want it to, but it will come. You just have to keep showing up. You have to keep working, be consistent, keep putting yourself on the start line, keep being your best self, and like every time you show up, just do your best and it'll come. Yeah. So I wish that I kind of was more patient with myself, and I'd say the second thing, if I could give 2 pieces of advice, is listen to your body. So for me, I would push myself like beyond my limits all the time, and I sometimes wish I could go back and be like, you know what? Maybe I should have done a few things differently. Maybe I should have, I don't regret anything. But now the way I train is very different than the way that I trained when I was 18, 19. So I'd say like honoring yourself. You're the only one that knows how you're feeling. So whether your teammates or coaches are putting pressure on you, you have to advocate for yourself and how you feel in those situations.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for having me.